You know, we've all been to a zoo or an aquarium and seen these incredible animals, right? Majestic lions, even gigantic whales. But have you ever stopped to think about who isn't there? Today, we're diving into the world of the uncapturables. These are the animals that just refuse to be contained, and they force us to ask some really tough questions about our relationship with the wild.
So let's just start with the most famous one, the elephant in the room. Or, I guess, the shark in the tank. Aquariums can house the biggest fish in the world, the whale shark, no problem. So how come you've never, ever seen a great white in one? Well, the answer to that question is this incredible and honestly pretty tragic story about the limits of trying to bottle up the wild.
Okay, now let's be super clear about something. For a lot of endangered species, captive breeding programs in zoos and aquariums are an absolute lifeline. They're critical. But there's a line, and for some animals, the very thing that makes them them, their need for endless open space, their incredibly unique biology, their deep, deep sensitivity to stress, it means that a cage, no matter how big or how well-meaning, basically becomes a death sentence.
So let's tackle the first and maybe the most obvious hurdle, sheer scale. For some of these creatures, their entire world is just too big, too open, and so defined by constant, non-stop motion that we can't even begin to replicate it. And for the great white, this isn't just about wanting to roam. It's a biological necessity. It's this concept called ram ventilation. And put simply, it means if a great white stops swimming, it stops breathing. It drowns. So a tank, no matter how massive you make it, isn't just a prison. It fundamentally goes against the very way they are built to live and breathe.
What's really wild is that this isn't some new puzzle we're trying to solve. This is a 70-year story of repeated, heartbreaking failure. I mean, look at this timeline. From the first tries back in the 50s, all the way up to just a few years ago in 2016, the story is always the same. The sharks get stressed, they refuse to eat, they injure themselves ramming into the glass, and ultimately they die, usually within just days or weeks.
This number? This is the absolute best we've ever done. 198 days. That's the all-time record, set by the Monterey Bay Aquarium with a young shark. That's just a little over 6 months. Before even that one, the most successful case ever had to be released back into the ocean just so it could survive.
But you know, physical space isn't the only problem. Sometimes, the cage isn't made of glass or concrete at all. It's made of pure psychological stress. For some animals, the sounds, the vibrations, the whole sensory experience of being in captivity is just unbearable.
This quote from the International Gorilla Conservation Program. Man, it is one of the most chilling things you can read in the conservation world. They're talking about all the attempts back in the 60s and 70s to keep mountain gorillas, and the conclusion is just absolute. None of which survived. Not some, not a few, none. 100% failure rate.
So, what's the deal? Why do we see their close relatives, the lowland gorillas, in zoos all the time, but never a mountain gorilla? Well, it all comes down to their natural home. Mountain gorillas evolved for this super quiet, peaceful life in misty forests, eating very specific plants. The noise, the crowds, the constant stress of a zoo, their bodies just can't handle it, unlike their more adaptable cousins.
And here is another mind-blowing example of this sensory overload problem. A narwhal's famous tusk, it's not just a big tooth. It's a highly advanced sensory organ just packed with millions of nerve endings. It can detect tiny changes in water temperature, pressure, you name it. Now, just try to imagine that level of sensitivity in the warm, loud, vibrating, chemically treated water of an aquarium. It'd be torture.
And the real-world result of this sensitivity is just tragic. Back in 1970, the Vancouver Aquarium captured 6 narwhals, and it just became this cascading disaster. Within a single month, all 3 babies were dead, and by the end of that year, every single adult was gone too. It was this brutal lesson in just how devastating and how fatal stress can be.
Okay, so our third and final barrier is what you might call a biological dead end. This is where an animal has evolved in such a specific, unique way that its needs are simply beyond our ability to replicate. We just can't do it.
And we can actually see the invisible toll of stress scientifically. The key is this hormone right here, corticosterone. By measuring how much of it is in an animal's blood, scientists can get a clear, number-based reading of exactly how much stress that animal is going through.
This chart from the New England Aquarium just makes it so obvious. It shows the stress hormone levels in healthy leatherback sea turtles compared to ones that were found stranded on a beach. And just look at that massive spike. That is the physiological signature of extreme distress. It's the animal's body literally screaming that it is in the wrong place.
And for leatherbacks, a simple tank is the source of all that stress. Because they're open ocean animals, they literally don't understand the concept of a wall. They just swim into barriers over and over again, constantly hurting themselves. You combine that with a diet that is almost nothing but jellyfish, and you've got an animal that is just biologically incompatible with aquarium life. Period.
And it's not just turtles. I mean, so many lemur species have been saved from extinction by captive breeding, but the Indri, one of the biggest lemurs out there, is the exception. Why? Its diet is so hyper-specialized on these very specific plants that only grow in its native Madagascar that it's just impossible to recreate somewhere else. Most of them simply don't make it past a year.
So, after looking at all these different cases, a really clear and, I think, powerful message starts to come through. For some of our planet's most amazing animals, captivity just isn't on the table. Their only home, their only chance, is out there in the wild.
This table really just ties it all together, doesn't it? It shows this impossible equation for captivity. For the great white, the barrier is space. For the narwhal and the mountain gorilla, it's unbearable stress. And for the leatherback and the Indri, it's biological specialization. Any one of these things alone can be a death sentence.
Now, we started all this by talking about the great white, an animal that we're all taught to fear. But this number completely reframes that whole relationship. This is a conservative estimate of how many sharks are killed by humans every single year, mostly from the fishing industry. So it really makes you stop and ask, who's the real danger to whom?
And that leads us to our final and I think most important question. We've pretty clearly established that some of the planet's most iconic animals are fundamentally uncapturable. We can't save them in our zoos. We can't save them in our aquariums. So, if the wild is the only place they can truly exist, what does that say about our collective responsibility to protect them?